I think if you asked any wargamer or modeler one of the worst things that could happen to them in gaming terms, pretty much top of the list would be the idea of spending hours and hours building terrain, painting up figures, and so on. Then you put them in a tray or a box and you're carrying them to the car to take to the club, and you stub your toe on the doorstep as you go out, and the whole lot goes flying off to the ground. If you're lucky, then nothing gets broken, but chances are something gets bent, something gets broken, and you have to repair or even start again in some cases. So, yes, today on Dragon's Teeth, we're talking about transportation. Hi, folks, I'm Rob Poynton. Thanks for joining me today. Regulars to the channel will know that we have just finished the cemetery build. Hohestor Cemetery is open and ready for business. I'm going to be taking it down to the club Monday week for the first playtest game of We Want the Gold Fantasy Skirmish. So, of course, as you know, if you've been watching that, I've got my tiles, I've got some boxes to put them in, but I've still got this issue of getting them from A to B without walking around with an armful of boxes. Anyway, I've come up with a few ideas, so let's take a look and see if the plan works. So, as you no doubt remember, rather than pizza boxes, which were just a little bit too small, a little bit too shallow for the most part, I got these Royal Mail boxes on Amazon, I think. My tiles are 12 inches square, a foot square, and they fit in very nicely and they're deep enough as well. Now, I don't really have too much of a damp problem in the shed here, but obviously when the weather's very wet, which seems to be most of the time at the moment, to be fair, it can get a little bit damp. I do have some heating coming on during the day, but I thought I'd get some of these packets of silica gel as well. So I'll just put a couple of those into each box and hopefully that will keep out any damp. So that's the terrain part. Now, for the other part, of course, I was looking at, as I've got this space, putting figures in there. So a trip to B&M got me half a dozen or so of these. They were a couple of quid each. And as you can see, they fit perfectly just in the side there. And again, the depth is just right for the box, but also for the figures as well. I've got, there's like a zombie there with a fearsome looking sort of pole arm. So that box is deep enough to have any taller figures or any figures carrying that kind of weapon. And the good thing with these boxes as well is they stack. So if I'm not storing them in with the terrain, I've got them in my cupboard, they stack up 3 or 4 high. I can get those nicely packed away as well. But of course, there is an issue for transport. And that issue is, I'm not going to do this too vigorously, but if these are being moved around, the figures will move about. So my wife came up again with the great idea of silicone mats. These are things that you put in the fridge, you put in your shelves in the fridge, you put your things in the fridge, and nothing moves about. So I thought, well, the theory seems sound. Let's try it and see if it works for figures. I got these on Amazon. This is 4 sheets. It's about a fiver or something like that. It feels suitably non-stick. So what I'm going to do is just measure out for the base of the tray for the box here, cut that out and put it in, and we'll see how it goes. I'll cut just inside the line so it should fit nicely into the bottom of the tray. There we go, we've got a nice fit there. So let's get our skellies. I'll just put a few of those in. Now we apply the jiggle test. Oh, look at that. Little bit of movement if I go sideways, but virtually no movement that way. I'll tilt a little bit as well. That's pretty good. That's like a 45-degree tilt each way. So yeah, if you're sort of tilting your boxes and stuff around more than that, then that's probably a sign to me you've dropped it or something. Just in a normal carrying to and from the car, they shouldn't really be moved around any more than that. So yeah, that looks like a resounding success. So I'll get the rest of my trays siliconed, as it were, and then we'll look at putting everything together. So you can get at least 20 figures in one of these boxes, one of these trays. And if I think about the game, it's going to be factions of 5 figures each and probably 4 or 5 players. So, in effect, I can get all the character figures pretty much into one box. That's another box for any monsters or creepy crawlies that might be lurking around. And I've got a couple of spare boxes for other bits and pieces as well. So, yeah, that looks like that's going to work really well. Just one thing I would say with this matting, one side is smooth and the other side is bubbled, a bit like bubble wrap. So you want the smooth side down. I did try it both ways round, and you definitely want the bubble side up for the non-stick. So that's the tray. Let's bring my box back in. That fits very nicely in there. I've got my silica gel. So now the next question is, once we've got all those packaged up, how am I going to transport them? I could, of course, just stack the boxes up, but there's 9 of these, so that's quite a height. I thought about maybe trying to put them in a sort of suitcase, or I've got a couple of big bags that I used to put all my music gear in, maybe something like that. Then I was, well, actually, it was on YouTube, I think. I saw a guy who was using shoe storage. You get these fabric cases that you can put loads of pairs of shoes in, and then you stick them under the bed. I had a look at the measurements and I thought, well, they look like they'll work. Again, not too expensive, 12 quid, 15 quid, something like that. I sent off for a couple. And well, let's see if the plan works, shall we? Oh, and just before we do that, I'll just mention my find at B&M that you may remember that I got cheap because it's got a crack in the side there, 2 quid. I think that's like a cutlery tray or a drawer organizer or something. And that has got non-stick matting already added in. So again, I can use this for figures, maybe for terrain or some other bits and pieces. So there's another option as well. Of course, that takes up pretty much the whole box by itself. Or I guess as you've got non-stick, you could just use it sort of out open like that. You don't necessarily need to put it in anything. All right, now I'm not sure I can get all of this in on the camera, to be honest, but this is what I got, 2 of these. So as I say, fabric and quite light. Not really designed for, carrying heavy stuff or chucking stuff about, really designed for underbed storage for shoes. This did come with some partitions as well, which might be useful. So I'm going to start putting my boxes in here. And the first thing, of course, I had to check was, had I got my measurements right? Which hopefully you think I had, given that my first job when I left school was as a trainee surveyor. So I should be all right at measuring stuff, shouldn't I? So I can get one there. I'll just grab another one. And I can get one there. So we know that we can get 2 across. I guess I could put them round this way as well. That might be better. So I can go either way round. That gives me space to put something in here, maybe a mat or something like that. Or again, some other boxes or trays with terrain in, such as my mausoleums. But now the other thing is, you think, well, this doesn't look very high, is it? and great. So you've got 2 boxes in there. You're still carrying, you know, a few items. But because this is fabric, I can actually get 4 boxes in very comfortably. That zips up. And there you go. So yeah, we've got handles at the end there. So you've got something to carry, putting them in and out of the car. 4 boxes in one, 4 boxes in the other. That's 8 of my 9 terrain pieces. The other one will just have to sit on top in its own box. But that is a lot easier to carry in. Basically, I'm carrying in 3 pieces rather than 9 pieces. And there's some measure of protection here. And again, if I do put other stuff in the front here, they're not really going to be moving about very much at all. So I'd say that was job done. There's our complete setup then. 8 boxes in the cases, 1 on top. You'll notice I've reinforced each of these boxes with some gaffer tape as well, because they won't be getting a lot of use, but they're just cardboard. So even every time you open and close, there's going to be a certain amount of wear and tear. Just reinforce the corners there. So not only good for transport, but also good for storage as well, because, you know, bearing in mind their original design, I could potentially store these under the bed. Of course, I'm going to have to clear that with the management first of all. I'm not sure how she'll feel about sleeping over a graveyard. My aunt once, she lived at the side of a graveyard. Her garden backed onto a graveyard. She seemed to have no problems with that. So I'm sure Lara will be fine with sleeping over a model one. Anyway, that's my storage and transport issue sorted for my cemetery. I hope you found that useful and interesting. Do let me know if you've got any ideas or similar suggestions. Always interested to hear. And I'll see you next time.